Okay, this is our, today's October 21st, 2019, and we're working on adding and multiplying fractions, okay, the difference between them. So adding fractions, of course, is a grade 7 outcome, and multiplying fractions is a grade 8 outcome, but the difficulty becomes when you have to do both. Everybody can multiply fractions in this room, I think. Everybody could probably add in this room, but when you have to do both kind of on the same piece of paper, it becomes a little challenging. So our first question says 2/3 plus 3/10. Of course, when you're adding fractions, you need to have common denominators. The first multiple that 3 and 10 share, I got to go pretty far for this one. The first one they share is 30. So because they share 30 as a multiple, I can use that as a common denominator to create equivalent fractions. So I'm going to rewrite this statement, but instead of you having denominators of 3 and 10, I'm going to create equivalent fractions that have denominators of 30. So the first fraction, 2/3, if you want to write this in the side margin, you can, is equal to how many 30ths? The answer is 20 30ths. So 20 30ths and 2/3 are what we call equivalent fractions. 3/10 and 9 30ths are equivalent fractions because we would multiply by 3. So we put that here. So instead of saying 2/3 plus 3/10, we can actually say 20 30ths plus 9 30ths, which if we add the numerators to figure out how many 30ths we have in total, your answer is 29 30ths. Now we know that's lowest terms because 29 is what we call a prime number, and the only things that are divisible into prime numbers are 1 in itself. And since 29 is not a factor of 30, we can't reduce it past of that. The second question gives you the exact same question, except instead of addition, it asks you to multiply. Now, there are two ways to do this, and I want you to be aware of both. The first way is simply to multiply your numerators and multiply your denominators to get 6 over 30, which I believe, if I look at the record of who did what, 6 out of 30, oh, no one said it. Look at that. Interesting. 6 out of 30 is not lowest terms because both are divisible because they're even numbers by 2. Give me 3 over 15. And I look at 3 over 15 and I'm like, hang on a second. That's not lowest terms either because both are divisible by 3. And I get 1 over 5. That's my final answer. So that's one way to do it. The more efficient way to do it is to realize that in order to get to 630, if I was to swap my numerators and put 3 times 2 here, I would still end up with this answer. I'd still end up with 6/30ths, which would still reduce down to this in lowest terms. However, if this was my starting product, my original question would have been 3 over 3 multiplied by 2 over 10, because if this was what I had, I would multiply the numerators, multiply the denominators, that's what I get. But a normal human being, if they were given the fraction 3 over 3, would not keep it as... So if it was 3 over 3, most people would say, you know what, that's not lowest terms. Let's start, instead of doing 3 over 3, let's do 1 over 1. Because I could use that, it's the same number, it's just lower, it's easier, reduce that starting fraction. And you know what, while I'm at it, 2 over 10 is not lowest terms either. 2 over 10 would have been 1 over 5 in lowest terms. And they're like, hold on, this is much easier. Because 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times 5 is 5. And I got the answer without doing any of this, right? I omitted all of that. But what we do is we don't actually physically rewrite this. We don't physically rewrite this. And what we do instead is we pretend the 3 was over the 3, and we say that would reduce down to 1 over 1. We pretend the 2 was over the 10, and we pretend that would reduce down to 1 over 5 because both are divisible by 2. And therefore, when we multiply it out, we got 1 times 1 over 1 times 5, which gives me the final answer in a much, much, much simpler way. Question 3 is addition with 5 and 10. Our common denominator will be 10. Our equivalent fraction will be 8/10 and 1/10. Add your numerators. Keep your denominator. The answer is 9/10. However, when we multiply it, you could just multiply the numerators and multiply the denominators. And you could get the answer 4/50ths. And then you could reduce it by dividing both numerator and denominator by 2. And get your final answer of 2/25ths. Or Pretend the 4 was over the 10 because it wouldn't affect the product. 4 over 10, if I'm thinking about 4 over 10, in lowest terms, 4 over 10 is 2/5, so I'm going to make this a 2 and this a 5. Multiply your numerators. 2 times 1 is 2. 5 times the new denominator 5 is 25. I get the same answer by cross-reducing. 4/9 plus 2/3, common denominator will be 9. Equivalent fraction to 2/3 will be 6/9. Add your numerators. Keep your denominator. Your answer is 10/9 as an improper fraction. But of course, we know that improper fractions represent amounts greater than 1, so therefore they can be expressed as a mixed fraction. How many 9s and 10? There's 1. How many left over? 1. So your answer is 1 and 1/9. The next question is the same thing, except this time multiplication. Here, interestingly enough, I cannot cross-reduce, right? I can't reduce this because 2 over 9 is lowest terms, 4 over 3 is lowest terms, 2 over 3 is lowest terms, 4 over 9 is lowest terms. So all I have to do is multiply my numerators, multiply my denominators to get 8 over 27, which is lowest terms. Question number 7. We have a slightly more difficult question in that you have denominators of 7 and 8. The first multiple 7 and 8 actually share is 56. So when I make my equivalent fractions, the numerators are going to be pretty big because I have to multiply by 8, multiply by 8. I got 32 56ths. I have to multiply by 7 to get 21 56. Add those together. I get 53 56. The good news is that is lowest terms. 53 56. The next question, if I was to multiply the numerators, I go 4 times 3, and multiply the denominators of 7 times 8, I get 12 over 56, which I know is not lowest terms because both are even numbers. So divide it by 2 to reduce it to lower terms, which is 6 over 28. And then I'm like, hold on a second, that's still even numbers. I can do it again. Divide by 2 again, I get 3 over 14. And now I know my answer is lowest terms because 14 is not divisible by 3, so therefore it can't be reduced past that. However, if I was to cross-reduce this instead, the 4 over 8 would have reduced nicely down to a 1 over 2. And if I did that, the product of this is going to get me right to this answer, 3/14, and I only had to do one step, 3/14. Question 9, 3 and 10, first common denominator they share, or first common multiple is 30. I get 20 30ths and 27 30ths, which is 47 30ths, which as a mixed fraction is 1 and 17 30ths. And the last question is the multiplication of the same things. So, if I multiply the numerators, I would get 18. If I multiply the denominators, I get 30. Reduce it down to lowest terms by dividing by a common number, in this case 2. I get 9 over 15. Some people think 9 over 15 is the correct answer, but both are divisible by 3. Give me 3 over 5 as a final answer. Now, if you're one of these people who, when they see 9/15, thinks that's lowest terms, cross-reduction's for you. Because cross-reduction allows you to see 9 over 3 as being 3 over 1. It allows you to see 2 over 10 as being 1 over 5. And when you multiply the numerators and multiply the denominators, you get the correct answer of 3/5 with very little thinking having to go on. And that is the answer to our quiz.